I wanted to talk a little bit about some beliefs that my alters have about consciousness and about what it means to exist because of their lived experiences and how they see the world, because I find it pretty fascinating. Before I go further, though, I want to emphasize that I'm not proclaiming this to be an absolute fact or universal truth. It is just a perspective born from the lived experience of my alters and my experience as a system with DID, otherwise known as Dissociative Identity Disorder. So it is deeply personal to me. However, regardless where you stand on your beliefs or your understanding of reality, I do think there is an intrinsic value in recognizing that this is how my alters experience their perceived reality, because I do see their beliefs and experiences as valid within the context of our system. And I think that deserves to be acknowledged and explored. There has been a recent push, especially given the increased attention that DID systems have received online due to the number of creators who are sort of the face of DID. So I think that, paired with how other people have responded, there's just been this push to either dismiss it completely as some sort of delusion or something that people are faking, neither of which are true. But there's also this active force to perceive it only through the lens of Western medicine. And while I do understand the value and importance of that, and that does have its place, I think it does overlook that there are systems like mine who don't experience DID in that way, and that forcing us to only see DID through this lens of Western medicine could actually be much more harmful than progressive, because that's essentially just tearing our system apart at the seams, whereas the journey that I've been on has been unifying us and all of the diversity of beliefs that we may hold as a system, finding common ground to express ourselves in a healthy and functional way without judgment, which is why I think forcing that medical or scientific framework on systems whose alters may not identify solely with those explanations of their existence, it is going to be more harmful than beneficial in the long run. In my case, for example, I have alters who believe they exist outside of this reality in realms or dimensions that defy our current understanding of physics and consciousness. When I first achieved this clarity with my system, I was absolutely terrified to bring it up to my therapist. Well, actually, the first thing I did was I was convinced that I had a brain tumor because I was experiencing dissociative seizures along with it, because it sent me into a panic. Because I wasn't just having clarity with my system and my alters, I was also experiencing everything they were experiencing and feeling, and this sensation of just waking up, feeling like your reality is not real. It's like, imagine, I don't know how to describe, it was such a surreal feeling. It's like, imagine being a goldfish in a fishbowl, and you think the fishbowl is the ocean. And then one day, somehow you just are bestowed with this knowledge that, hey, you're actually not in the ocean, bro, you're in a fishbowl. Or even just like, if suddenly we had this like mass understanding that, oh my God, we're all in a fucking simulation or in a video game or something, like how much panic and chaos that would cause. That's how it felt. I went into shock. I was having a lot of seizure-like episodes that I still am prone to, but they're not as, thankfully, they're not happening as often anymore because I'm not getting triggered as easily. But they can still happen if I have like really intense emotions. Usually they'll get triggered by a really intense emotion, whether it be good or bad, or they can get triggered by drugs and alcohol. So like where I live, marijuana is legal. Basically anything that's going to alter my state of consciousness is at risk for me of like triggering rapid switching and very intense switches, which then could trigger dissociative seizures because of how intense those switches are for me, where I am having an out-of-body experience, and it sends me into a panic where I can't tell if I'm about to die or I'm about to wake up in a pod on an alien planet. I don't know which one. That's how it feels. I'm like so terrified, or I'm about to just like realize my whole life is fake and it's actually the Truman Show. Again, there's a difference between like hypothetically having these discussions with your friends when you're like stoned and being a DID system where you're like, nah, there's people, I have alters in my head that are literally watching my life play out like it's a television show. It's not a hypothetical discussion for me. It is a lived experience, regardless of what your beliefs are. For me, this is a lived experience. And there are times when it's so intense that I genuinely wonder if I'm actually just trapped in my inner world and I'm one of my alters, because I have alters who do not know they're alters, just living their life inside the inner world. And I'm like, what if that's me? I can't think about that for too long because I'll have a panic attack and induce a dissociative seizure. So I usually just try not to think about that, honestly. So we're gonna change the subject now. Anyways, I got off topic and I went off script. So after all of that, after, experiencing all of that and going through all the testing, which I have done before anyone says anything, I did a heart monitor for 2 weeks, did a bunch of EEG testing. I got an MRI, CT scan. I did everything, okay? Because I was very convinced for a while there that I had a brain tumor. Nope, everything's good. I am okay. Just a little fucking crazy. But after all of that, I was actually like really scared to bring up to my therapist that I had alters who are like, that's not all we are. We don't see ourselves as alters. We see ourselves as our own individual beings. And actually, your reality is the dream reality. And we feel like our reality is a real reality. It's actually even bigger than that because maybe both of our realities are real and existing at the same time because hello, the multiverse. Anyway, I was so scared that I was going to be told that I was experiencing a psychosis or that my experience was going to be it pathologized to the extreme where I would be recommended to be put on medications or that I was going to find out I was schizophrenic or something, which I'm not. Before anyone accuses that, I don't have the symptoms that line up with schizophrenia. There has been a long history of DID getting misdiagnosed as schizophrenia because we don't really have the language to like properly describe our experiences. For example, when we say we hear our alters or we're communicating with our alters, a lot of times what people imagine is that we're literally just walking around and hearing voices, but that's not what it is. It's a way of thinking within your own consciousness, within your own mind. There is no auditory noise coming from outside of you. There's no hallucinations. The biggest thing with DID is that it is rooted in dissociation. And although there can be brief periods where, you're going to, at least in my experience, feel disconnected from reality and have that fear and that intensity where you're like, is this a dream? Is this not a dream? Is this real? The difference is that you come out of that. You're able to ground yourself. Whereas somebody who is schizophrenic, they're not able to do that. That's not to say that people that are schizophrenic are forever stuck in that state. It's just what can happen when you're unmedicated, untreated, and you're experiencing schizophrenia. More than likely, you are going to go into a psychosis at some point. At least from my understanding. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Again, that is not my area of experience, so I do not fully know, but that is my understanding based on the conversations that I had with my therapist, which has been a lot because I was very concerned that something was wrong and I had to be reassured multiple times that what I was experiencing with my system was normal. It's just different because every system is different. And thankfully, my therapist is experienced with working with other systems who hold similar beliefs. And, I'm also with somebody who understands the history and the malpractice and misdiagnosing DID systems with disorders like schizophrenia and how those misdiagnoses can sometimes induce a psychosis rather than alleviate it. And it's not actually as uncommon as people might think for alters to hold beliefs that don't align with the medical or scientific explanations of their existence. So in my experience, it has been far more healing and beneficial for myself to let go of that skepticism, my preconceived notions of reality of the universe, and just allow my alters to express their beliefs in functional, healthy ways rather than forcing them to suppress or conform to our current understanding of consciousness and reality. To do so otherwise feels so unfair, not just to them, but to me as well. I think it dismisses the complexity of our shared existence, and it ignores the fact that we are living in this reality every day. It's easy for observers, especially those who haven't experienced DID firsthand, to impose their frameworks onto us. But in truth, our system has found balance and healing in honoring the diverse beliefs and experiences of our alters, even when those beliefs challenge conventional understanding, and even when those beliefs lack empirical evidence. So all of that said, I'm going to get into this here. Some of this I know has, I think to some extent it has been proposed by Bernardo Kastrup. Hope I'm saying that right. So I'm in no way claiming to have coined this theory. This is more of an expansion of that. And also, I had this understanding of, from my alter's belief, that we are a microcosm of a macrocosm, when I had this awakening of realizing that I myself am essentially an alter. And I had that feeling of, is my reality as fixed and as definitive as I actually think it is? Because while some people do see, the alter that is out the most as being the host, I kind of had came to this awareness that while I am the host of my system, I am also an alter inside of my system. And that was really daunting to understand, but also unifying in a way, because it put me on equal grounds with everyone else, even the ones who aren't actively switching in and out, and those who aren't switching in and out at all, and the ones that I don't have communication with, but I have communication with other alters who can communicate with them. But it was after that that I ended up Googling it, and that's when I came across Bernardo's theory, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually a thing that's being talked about right now. And that put me into a whole you know what crisis. I'm not going to try to say it again. I feel like I'm going to fail. Existential. No. But to go a bit further than that, my alters, at least the ones that I am in the most clear communication with, they see our existence as us being literally the living multiverse, as in you and me, as in that our minds are literally portals to other universes. I think this is actually reflective of some of the writings that I have in my book, even though I didn't know it at the time. But I remember there was a line somewhere where I said, everything inward, everything inside, know thyself and you will know why. And I thought back to that when I had this realization, because that is how they perceive the world. They see everything as being a spiral, and that to know oneself is to know the universe, because we are the universe. We are the multiverse, literally living, breathing universes, because they see the universe itself as a mental construct, as a mind that we are inside of, and they see the multiverse as other extensions of that, as in what is inside of our mind, as in what we are creating through fiction, because those are universes that are existing inside of our mind. So if the universe is a tapestry of interconnected realities, then my mind, with its many alters, is a microcosm of that multiverse. And how my alters feel is that if that's true for us, then maybe it's true for everyone. Perhaps each of us in our own way is a universe unto ourselves, a living, breathing multiverse experiencing itself through the lens of individuality. From my personal experience with dissociative identity, it's not just a condition of fractured identity, but it's a testament to the pluralistic nature of my consciousness. Within my mind, there exist distinct alters, each with their own thoughts, emotions, memories, and perspectives. These alters aren't just fragments of a broken whole, but they are complete within themselves, coexisting within the shared framework of my mind. So in this way, my mind mirrors the structure of the multiverse. Just as the multiverse is said to contain countless parallel realities, my mind contains countless parallel selves. Each alter is a universe in its own right, a unique expression of consciousness within the broader cosmos of my mind. And just as the multiverse is interconnected, so too are my alters, influencing and shaping one another in ways that are both subtle and profound. So that's kind of what basically led them to this perspective that every conscious being within itself is a living, breathing multiverse. In that, what if the universe and its infinite complexity becomes self-aware through us, through the countless minds that perceive, interpret, and create reality? So if each mind is essentially a universe, and within my mind there are countless worlds or perspectives, then these worlds are not isolated. They are all interconnected. They are each reflecting and influencing the other. So what it really comes down to, which this isn't a new concept by any means, this is a very common thing that's spoken of in philosophy. I just don't think it's heard of very often in the context of DID, but we are not separate from the universe. We are the universe experiencing itself through countless individual lenses. I just think DID further demonstrates that. It is a microcosm of this exact belief or theory. You know, like philosophers and mystics have long suggested that we are the universe becoming self-aware. But I think my experience with dissociative identity disorder does add this new dimension to this understanding, understanding. If my alters are the universe coming to know itself within the cosmos of my mind, then perhaps all conscious beings are playing a similar role on a cosmic scale. And yeah, in this view, there is that esoteric notion that we are all God, not as an external deity, but as manifestations of the universe's self-awareness. Each of us as a creator and a creation, a storyteller and a story, a dreamer and a dream. We are the stars and the planets and the galaxies and the voids, the known and the unknown. We are the multiverse experiencing itself in infinite ways. Honestly, I'm just surprised that DID hasn't been further explored as a key to understanding more about consciousness. I think for so long it's been pathologized, seen as a disorder, even a delusion by some people, because it is so stigmatized within the community, even within the medical community, where there are so many people who believe it doesn't exist, believe that it's extremely rare, which I don't think it's actually as rare as people like to believe it is, even professionals in the medical community, because the fact of the matter is it can take a long time to get diagnosed with this disorder. And are we really going to sit here and pretend that childhood trauma is a rare phenomenon? No, it's not. No, the fuck it's not. And maybe that's part of the problem, that recognizing DID as not being as rare as we think it is would also be uncovering the epidemic that is child abuse. Because this is something that originates within suffering, within trauma, because it is within trauma that our minds adapt and learn how to dissociate from this reality in a way that is not typical, that we can't fully make sense of or understand because, well, you're not in the mind that is dissociating. So what if DID isn't a deviation from the norm, but a magnification of it? What if it reveals something fundamental about the nature of consciousness and existence that most conscious minds don't have access to or can't see within themselves because they haven't experienced a level of trauma that gets you to this point of dissociation, or because they have DID and they don't know it yet? Because this is, in essence, a hidden experience. Your alters are not going to make themselves known unless they are forced to through more compounded trauma, which can be extremely disruptive and horrible for the system, because in that sense, you're not being revealed that you have DID because you're healing, which is what happened with me. It's happening because you're experiencing more violence in your life and your alters are forced to make themselves known in order to protect you. But on the flip side of that, there's people like me who I had been healing and actively receiving treatment for the abuse that I experienced in childhood, for PTSD. And it was through that healing that I unknowingly was healing my system as well, even before I knew I had alters, because this was something that we were all going through as a collective. So even though I had some rough patches and a rough couple of years after first getting diagnosed, I did have a much smoother transition than others who may have found out that they had alters through more compounded trauma later on in their adulthood. Circling back to what I said about DID potentially revealing something fundamental about the nature of our consciousness, my alters don't see themselves as anomalies. They see themselves as an expression of the pluralistic nature of reality. They believe that identity is not singular but multifaceted, and that consciousness is not static but dynamic, and that existence is not linear but multidimensional. So in this sense, DID isn't really necessarily a disorder at all. It's an expression, it's a doorway, it's a gateway to a deeper understanding of what it means to exist in this reality. In the end, I also think that this belief is as much about storytelling as it is about science and philosophy. We are the stories we tell ourselves and the narratives that shape our understanding of reality. My alters are stories within stories, worlds within worlds, minds within minds, each contributing to the ever-unfolding narrative of my existence. And just as my mind is a cosmos of stories, so too is the universe. We are the stories told and untold, the dreams and the dreamers, the creators and the creations. We are the multiverse, and the multiverse is us. And on that note, I gotta find another poem to read. Wait a minute. I think I'll read 2 poems. I know I've read these before, but we're gonna be going back and repeating some poems, so that is what it is. This first one is Eternal, Eternal, and the next one is Thyself, which I'm just gonna go right into reading it after I finish the first one. Eternal, internal. Did I say that right? Wait. Why does that sound weird out loud? Eternal, no. Why can't I talk today? Eternal. I think it just sounds weird. I think I'm saying it right. It just sounds weird out loud. Eternal, internal. I can feel it slipping. I must type quickly before we forget we are not from here. We are from a different reality. Sometimes we may have the face you wear, other times not so much. The eyes, though. There's something in the eyes that stays the same. This is how we can influence one another. We know how it's been done because it's already been written. We've done it because we've already experienced it. Many think we must go somewhere outward when we leave our worlds behind, but we travel further inside. Everything inward, everything inside. Know thyself, and you will know why. Thyself. Who am I, you ask? You are you, and I am me. We are two pieces of a puzzle finding each other all over again, because that is the beauty of existing as a piece of a whole. The whole cannot know what it is until it is apart from its true nature. Just as the divine cannot understand what it means to be divine without first knowing what it means to not be. Otherwise, the act of being divine is as inconceivable as being nothing. Which one am I, you ask? The mortal or the divine? Sweet child, which one would you like to be? Choose wisely, dear one, for the heart knows the power you wield inside the chambers of thy mind, when the mortality we speak of is not tied to that which lies in the borrowed bodies we inhabit, only to those pieces of yourself to which you continue to fragment. Remember, and you will have answered all your own questions. Know thyself, and you will stand right where I stood, the day I asked myself who I felt looking down upon me. I love that last line. I think because it can have so many meanings. I mean, I'm still in awe. I feel like I'm like I know it sounds egotistical to be a fan of my own work, but I swear it's just because I feel like I didn't write it by myself, because it is a culmination of all of my alters, and because this was a whole experience for me where I would write something and I wouldn't remember writing it and I would have to go back. And there's hints of that within my writing. I think there's a poem where the last line is, remember or don't forget when you get to this part of the start. And the kind of hidden joke there was that this is where you're starting because you forgot what you just wrote. So I had to start back over. It was very mind-bending just experiencing all of this, because I went into trances, and I do go into trances when I write because I am actively, rapidly switching with alters. And I think that last line speaks so profoundly to me, because you can interpret it multiple ways. You know, if you believe that the universe is a mental construct, if you believe that there is a higher beings out there that exist, or higher minds of consciousness, you could take it as a god, right? But you could also understand that it's an alter inside the inner world, coming to this knowledge of understanding that they are an alter, this awareness of asking themselves who they are feeling, looking down at them, that being me, looking into my inner world and trying to make sense of what's going on, just as they are looking into their inner world, which is this reality, and seeing me as above, so below. So for them, because I do have such a complex inner world, for whatever reason, I know not all systems are made the same way. This is just how I've come to understand mine is constructed. In essence, I am the creator of this universe. I am a god in a sense, but they see every single living person as also being a creator, because it doesn't end with me. Again, a microcosm of a macrocosm of how they think the entirety of the universe actually exists, as in we are all a mind inside of a mind inside of a mind, or a dream within a dream, or a simulation within a simulation. I mean, there's a story within a story. There's a lot of different ways you could describe it. I don't know that we fully even have the language to portray how they see reality, because it is kind of a mind-bending concept to really think about, this idea that what if our physical reality isn't actually physical, but a manifestation of physical, in the same way that my alters believe and experience their reality as being a physical one. And yet it is not, because here I am and here you are. So I think their question is, how do I know? How do I know that my reality is not a reflection, or that their reality isn't a reflection of this one, I rather should say. Anyways, y'all have fun with that, thinking about that for a minute. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye.